Raila Amolo Odinga, the ODM party leader, has contested for the presidency of the Republic of Kenya 4 times. In 1997, Raila Odinga contested for the presidency and introduced himself into the national stage. He again contested in 2007. In 2007, Raila Odinga won the presidency, but he was never declared the president of the Republic of Kenya. He again tried his luck in 2013 and 2017. And his supporters have always believed that Raila Odinga has always won the presidency, but has never been declared because of the deep state. And that's why they strongly believe that in 2022, Raila Odinga has a chance if the president is going to support him. Without that, they believe there's nothing which Raila Odinga has never done. So Raila Odinga is likely to contest again in 2022. And if you go back into the previous elections, Raila Odinga has always committed some political mistakes. In 2007, Raila Odinga committed 2 major mistakes. The first mistake was early celebration. According to those who were there, Raila Odinga and his team started celebrating their victory even before the final results were announced. By the time they were realizing, a place like Tarakaniti, which had less than 20,000 registered voters, registered 90,000 people voting. So that's how they lost. Then the second mistake they committed was failure to agree on how to share government. So by the time voting was still going on and they were seeing chance of winning, they started disagreeing on the composition of the cabinet. Everybody wanted to be in the cabinet. So they forgot about the whole issue of protecting their votes. And that's how they lost in 2007. In 2013 and 2017, majority of his supporters believe that Raila Odinga was rigged cleverly using the electronic system, because Raila Odinga had high hopes on the election and the election process. So he forgot that these guys were going to interfere with the system. But in 2022, Raila Odinga is likely to run, but will he succeed? So in this video today, I want to explain to you guys the 8 mistakes which Raila Odinga advisors must avoid in 2022 if they hope to succeed this time round, because they are facing an opponent who is called William Samoei Ruto. William Ruto is not Mwai Kibaki. William Ruto is not President Uhuru Kenyatta. This is a guy who's seen it all. He was in KANU, saw how rigging was taking place. He was with Kibaki, so he was with Raila, he saw how their victory was stolen. This same guy was with President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2013 and 2017. He saw how they could use the system or the electronic system to rig. So they must avoid these 8 mistakes. The first mistake they must avoid is branding Raila Amolo Odinga as a statesman. Of course, Raila Odinga is referred to as the Mandela of Kenya. But politics is local. We are in a country where the people of Kiambu, for example, rejected William Kabogo and voted overwhelmingly for a goon by the name Ferdinand Waititu. We are in a country where in Jubilee nominations, the voters opted for Mike Mbuvi Sonko at the expense of Peter Kenneth. And when the elections time came, they also rejected Evans Kidero at the expense of Mike Mbuvi Sonko. So politics is local. So if you have to brand Raila Amolo Odinga based on local politics, internationally, it will take care of itself. As long as Raila Odinga is not engaged in electoral malpractices, his name will be there. But ensure that his branding is local. Forget about Raila Odinga being the next Mandela of Kenya. Forget about Raila Odinga being a statesman. First and foremost, let Raila Odinga be declared the President of the Republic of Kenya. Whether it means going dirty on opponents. So that's the first thing they should not allow to happen. The second mistake they must do is to stop underrating their opponents, especially William Samoei Ruto. As we speak, the 2022 general election is actually shaping up to be a two-horse race between William Ruto and Raila Odinga. In the last election, Raila Odinga and his advisors underrated President Uhuru Kenyatta, because Uhuru Kenyatta had been defeated in 2002 and Raila Odinga had actually won in 2007. So they just believed that Uhuru was going to be a walkover. Someone who was coming from Kano, someone who was a Kikuyu, and Kenyans were not ready for another Kikuyu presidency. By the time they realized, Uhuru was already heading for victory. So they should avoid this temptation of underrating their opponent. Whether that opponent is Ruto, whether that opponent is Alfred Mutua, whether that opponent is Okoth Obado, whether that opponent is Mike Sonko, they should not underrate their opponents. That's something they must work hard to avoid. The third thing, which they've always committed, is ignoring the influence of social media. I remember in 2013, when we were trying to sell this idea of social media to Raila Odinga, there's a guy, I won't mention his name, very senior official within the ODM party. This guy used statistics to dismiss our push for investment in social media. He told us social media by that time was negligible. Of course, today, every politician is appreciating social media, including Raila Odinga. But that social media should not just be social media. It should be focused. There is a generation in this country, the latest generation, the .com generation, who don't understand where this country is coming from. For them, everything ends with the fancy on social media. So Raila Odinga must figure out how he's going to appeal to this generation. Look at how William Ruto is doing it. William Ruto used to put on jeans which were ironed. His wardrobe has completely changed. He's doing that just to appeal to this group of voters. In the last election, I want to give credit to whoever was responsible for the dressing of Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga used to dress so youthful. So youthful. Tight khaki trousers, very nice flowered shirts. That must continue. But this idea of ile kofia, what Godfather, ile kofia Godfather, na those liberation t-shirts, shirts hizo za kwenda matanga, he must avoid. Because this generation would rather vote for someone like Mike Sonko with his bling bling. They would rather vote for Hassan Joho with his Katarina dance. So they must figure out how they are going to communicate to that segment, because that segment are actually currently the majority in this country. And the only thing which favors Raila Odinga is that despite his age, he can use the word Baba to endure himself to those people. Like what the daughters of Raila did. You know, they identify Raila Odinga as a father, as Baba, and came up with very innovative strategies. So they should not ignore social media influence. Number 4, which is the biggest mistake, is dragging Raila Odinga into local politics. That's a big mistake. They should avoid dragging Raila Odinga into local politics. If Gladys Wanga is facing off, for example, with John Mbadi, Raila Odinga should not be dragged in a way that he'll be seen to be favoring a side. If in Siaya, James Orengo and Wandai are facing off, then Raila Odinga should not be seen to be favoring a side. If Joho, for example, in Mombasa, I know there is Mohammed Shabal and there is Abdul Samwad Nasir who are facing off in Mombasa, gubernatorial seat. Raila Odinga should not be involved in such internal politics. You go to Kilifi, for example, the home to ODM number 1, Mungaro versus someone else. Raila Odinga should not be dragged so much into those. In the last election, Raila Odinga was dragged to an extent that in Nyanza, the ODM had even the Nyanza presidential campaign team. Waste of time, waste of resources. Those resources could have been used in places like Western Kenya or even Kakamega here to win those support if everything was just allowed. For example, in Homa Bay, where Awete was facing off with Magwanga, those who were supporting Magwanga were actually ODM supporters. So by Awete winning or by Magwanga winning, still those people would have still voted for Raila Odinga. But of course, sometimes there's the need for guided democracy, but he must avoid overindulgence into local politics. The fifth mistake, which I'm foreseeing them doing, is over-relying on the deep state. Uhuru indicated that nowadays they have the deep state, that the only thing they've always won the previous elections, but they've never been declared. The truth of the matter is that even if you have the deep state, there are certain efforts which you must put in place. The deep state will only help you, for example, during the registration of voters. When voters are being registered, like in the last registration of voters, in Nyanza, we had so few kits. So IBC could not reach so many people. In Central Kenya and Rift Valley, almost, I don't know, there were registration kits almost everywhere. So that's how deep state can influence. But if you can't tell your people to go and register, even if they're facilitated to an extent that at each polling station there's a voter register, voter registration kit, and you don't tell your people to go and register, they won't. So by the time you realize, it will be late. So they must not rely so much on the deep state. The sixth thing is that they should never assume automatic support in their stronghold. And this is the biggest problem. In Nyanza, they always assume that once Raila Odinga is nominated as a presidential candidate, his party nominates individuals, those individuals will automatically go into parliament or become governors because people will automatically support them. This has led to serious voter apathy even in Nyanza. Personally, there are two people I know who never voted in the last election because they didn't see any need. People need to be persuaded. As much as Nyanza or Luo Nyanza will be supporting Raila Odinga, they need to be persuaded continuously. As long as cost is with Nyanza, they need to be persuaded constantly. And this is something which Raila Odinga has failed in the last two elections. He's not really persuading his stronghold to support him. The seventh mistake, which was common in the last election, is infiltration. Let me take you to William Ruto and his party. I just wanted to figure out or to check the people currently driving William Ruto campaign. Who are they? You can talk of Hassan Omar. You can talk of Johnson Mudhama. You can talk of Boni Alwale. Who else? There are several. Eliud Owalo. Why do you think they jumped ship immediately? Some of them actually infiltrated this camp. I was in Okwa, Kenya, and I used to tell Engineer Kari Orega, I know probably is watching this. I used to tell him, and this is the first time I'm coming with this public, I used to tell Kari Orega that one of the co-chairs of Okwa, Kenya, Johnson Mudhama, was working for the opponent. Nobody would have believed me that time. But later on, people started believing me, especially after what happened. In the last election, there are people I know who worked in the communications department of Raila Odinga, who were actually put there by William Samoei Ruto. Those who ought to have worked there were actually kicked out. So immediately, people started voting. These people started convincing people that Raila Odinga should just accept results. How do you accept results even before the results are out? Later on, some of these people moved swiftly to the other camps. And it came to light that these guys were actually agents. So Raila Odinga and his advisors must avoid this infiltration by empowering the people who have always stood with them for a long time. And lastly is overconfidence. If there's one thing which has always destroyed Raila Odinga and his team is overconfidence. They are overconfident on everything. You should not be overconfident. That's a mistake which should never happen. I don't know whether there's any other mistake which you believe Raila Odinga and his advisors must avoid in 2022. Let me hear it. And in my next video, I want to do something about the Building Bridges Initiative process, the drama and the intrigues over the appointment of judges, and how those appointment of judges are likely to influence the outcome of 2022. Until next time, this is Lee Makwiny. I hope to see you again in my next episode. Thank you so much, guys. And if you're watching this channel for the first time, please click that subscribe button. And to the subscribers, thank you so much. Give this video a thumbs up. Bye-bye.